Welcome to EnVision Center News, where we discuss community impact and involvement with today's nonprofit leaders and philanthropists.
Rebekah, thank you for coming on the podcast. Please tell us a little bit about your organization and what great things you're doing in our community.
Thank you, Connie, for having me. Bonner Homeless Transitions, actually, we are celebrating our 30th year of being open.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yes. So I've only been on for a little over a year, and we primarily serve single women and women with children that are either facing homelessness or are homeless. When you think of the word homeless, most people think of Seattle streets or Portland or San Francisco, but the population that we serve, they're living in their car or couch surfing or too afraid to leave a DV situation because they don't know where to go. That's the population that we typically primarily serve. Now, we do serve single men with children and families. We have 4 one-bedroom apartments where we can house husband and wife and their kiddos. We're not a shelter. We're a long-term program up to 24 months. We get people on their feet. The idea is to work towards self-sufficiency. So drug and alcohol free, they're tested upon move-in and then random testing throughout the program. They're required to have employment within 15 days. That's a little lenient depending on the circumstances. If you're a single mom with multiple children, trying to get them into childcare sometimes takes a little bit longer, but the goal is 15 days.
And what's your involvement in helping them find that employment?
Yeah, so depending on the circumstance and situation, we help them with building their resume, filling out applications. We have connections in town with employers that will hire people in our program.
Okay, that's wonderful. And I mean, when you've been around for 30 years, gosh, you've got to have a lot of connections. I think that surprises me. Obviously, I didn't do my homework. I didn't know y'all had been around for 30 years. And I think people in our community are starting to recognize that homelessness is becoming a bigger problem than maybe we're used to. But if you've been around for 30 years, then it actually really isn't that new of a problem. But what have you seen change-wise in terms of the need?
So I'll just talk about since I've been there.
Yeah.
I was there, I've been there a year in this last July.
In your current role or at all?
In the organization.
Okay.
In the current role. And I mean, our wait list, is ever growing, and it's, we get a lot of calls from single men. Unfortunately, we don't serve single men unless they come with children, right?
Yeah.
And there's the mission here for them and the Freedom House and whatnot. But for the families, we don't have as much space for families. So that list is a little bit longer than like for single women and women with children.
And so do you have like different apartments or houses, or is there a need there where you're always looking for new buildings to house these folks? How does that work?
So we have 3 locations, 2 in town, 1 out in Trestle Creek. Our north location is for single women and women with children, and that's communal living. So everyone gets their own bedroom, but they share kitchen, dining room, and living room and bathrooms. Our south location has 4 apartments down below for the families and single dads, and upstairs is 5 communal bedrooms for single women. Okay. Our Trestle Creek property, it's actually currently for sale. It's 5 acres with 5 homes, and that's where we also are able to house families.
Why is it for sale? Or
the problem out there is resources, with the requirement of everyone being employed. If someone doesn't have a vehicle, they're not able to get into town to work. Yeah. We have 2 empty lots, so the idea is to sell the property out there and then build in town.
You have some empty lots already acquired in town?
Yes, 2.
Okay. Wonderful. How long have you been sitting on those?
The organization has owned those for several years.
Okay.
the one lot had a home on it that burnt down, I believe, 10 years ago. And then the other lot had a duplex on it that it would cost more to get it livable than to. So we actually had that torn down this summer.
Okay.
So.
And so is building there contingent upon selling the
Yes.
property? So you need someone to come in and buy that so you can
Yes.
keep moving along.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And so how do you say you have a wait list? So normally people are reaching out to you or through places like EnVision Center, maybe recommending they come to you. Is that how people normally find out?
Yeah, word of mouth. We get a lot of people from Idaho EnVision Center, Pre-Server Ministries, unfortunately, parole and probation officers as well.
Okay. And what do you think is, I mean, you kind of touched on this already, that people, when they think about homelessness, they think about, oh, that's a city issue and we don't really have that here, at least not in the same way. What are some other misconceptions that maybe locals have about the homeless problems facing our local population?
That's a great question. The little bit that I've run into is some community members think that our program is too long, that we need to help them get to self-sufficiency sooner. I think inflation has a lot to do with it. What's driving, it's not cheap to live in Sandpoint.
Right. And why does the organization do the 24 months? That's just the way it's always been, or is, you study and it takes about 2 years for people, or what's the logic behind that?
That's the way it's always been. And back in the day, it was really easy to get people into self-sufficiency in 24 months. Now it's a lot more difficult. Before I came in, they wouldn't actually start having them apply for low-income housing until they were halfway through the program. Now we start at about 3 months in.
Okay. Because you just know you need that much lead time, basically. Ooh,
Yeah, so it's pretty difficult. The other issue that we run into a lot is low-income housing can accept felons unless their felony is 7 years old. And so, unfortunately, that's, a big portion of our population.
Yeah.
So we just have to think outside the box.
Yeah. And is it frequently, or maybe you don't even know that this is kind of digging in the weeds a little bit, but are the people that come to you and need help, are they typically people who've moved into the area more recently, or are they like longstanding locals that now that things have changed a lot around in Bonner County are struggling?
Seems like the majority of them are born and raised here.
Yeah. Not that it would be any better if they were coming in, but it does hurt a little bit. But it feels a little bit more, I don't know, like we're failing our own people if it's people who've been here for 30 years or as long as your organization has existed or close to that or longer.
And it seems, I guess you could call it a cycle too. A handful of our clients remember living in our program when they were a child.
Yeah.
So it's just trying to break that cycle with them as well.
And what are some success stories that you have that you really love to tell?
Oh my goodness.
Too many to count.
Yes. So one of my most recent favorites would be we have a younger mom, just had her 4th child, and this last spring she was able to graduate and get her GED, something that she was working on extremely hard. They have applied for a home, and it looks like they'll be getting that within the next few months.
Yeah.
I should say 6 to 9 months. So just a lot of our people just need to know that someone believes in them.
Yeah.
And just build that connection. The other thing that we do now that's a little bit different since I've started is it's more of a community-based program. It's not just serving those that are in our program. This summer we had 6 families living up Trestle Creek because you can camp on Forest Service land for free. You just have to move every 14 days. And we provided the tents and the coolers, sleeping bags, and all those things. 5 out of the 6 are in permanent housing. One family we got in a week before she delivered, which was amazing. And what was our community is super giving. We were able to fill her entire apartment.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Another success is a family that they were there, I believe, about 5 years ago, had 6 kids, set of triplets, and dad actually owns his own business, and they own their own home now.
Wow.
Yeah, doing
That's
really
awesome.
well.
So I guess talk a little bit more about the program itself. Like, do
Yeah.
they have a social worker, a counselor, or like who is kind of walking alongside them, and like how often do they have that touch point?
Yeah, so once they move in, we help them get settled. Everyone has a program manager that they meet with once a week. And we start with an action plan, kind of figure out what got them to our program and what we need to do to help them get into, to self-sufficiency. And so case managers are working on budgeting, they're working on employment. Sometimes they might be in a position that they don't necessarily love. So we'll help them with that, just better their employment. We provide parenting classes. Right now, everyone's in an 8-week parenting course that they're all required to attend. Wednesday nights are kind of our required mandatory classes. So before this, we did twice a month group counseling for all the moms, and then we provided dinner and childcare. That was twice a month. Self-defense class was once a month, and then
cool.
budgeting once a month.
Cool. Are your classes pretty standard, or are there sometimes maybe people in the community or whatever, I would like to teach a self-defense class, or how do those other maybe special extracurriculars or whatever get worked in, if there are any?
Yeah, it's just word of mouth, talking to people. My husband's in law enforcement, so I knew that one of the officers taught the self-defense, so she came in and was doing that.
That's really
which
cool.
they all loved.
I'm sure. I mean, yeah, how cool is that?
Yeah.
So how did you get involved in this line of work? Have you always been in nonprofit work, or what led you here?
So before kids, I was an office manager for United Way, so that's where the spark was. And then stay-at-home mom, then went into education. Special ed was my love, more transition. So it was 18 to 21-year-olds with special needs, community-based learning. We moved up here. I did life skills for a year and realized that it really wasn't for me anymore, and heard about this position and applied, and here I am.
Wow. So you hadn't, at least not anytime recently, really been involved in the homeless category of work. What was that learning curve like, or did it come pretty easy to you?
I was pretty involved in with United Way with the homeless. They do it a little bit different where I was from, just like the homeless count and that sort of thing. And at the previous high school that I was at, it was pretty low income base as well. So always just trying to find resources for people. I worked at the resource classroom for about a year until I realized that it probably wasn't the safest position for me with my husband in law enforcement. And so that's when I really got into transition. And so it's always been a passion of mine. We used to feed the homeless with the kids. And so when I found this position, it just seemed like it would be a really good fit. I knew, being a life learner, I knew that there would be a learning curve, but I was up for the challenge.
And everything seems to always connect, even when we have people who are sitting where you're sitting and maybe they say, oh, this is my first time kind of doing this type of thing. But then you talk to them and you're like, oh, no, you were kind of doing it all along. There's a reason why you landed where you did.
And so really, I'm big on wraparound community support. So we have partnerships with Idaho and Pre-Server Ministries, obviously EnVision Center, and just bringing everyone in because we all know that the population that we serve, they need the wraparound support. And I couldn't do this job without the community support as well.
What's your biggest need right now from the community? If someone's listening to this and they're like, "Oh, I didn't know much about that organization." Is it financial, volunteers? You need actual professionals right now. Where could you use help?
All of the above. Fundraising is a huge need right now, and volunteers to fill committee positions.
Okay, what is that? Are committee positions? What other?
I mean, committee for like a fundraising committee.
Oh, for fundraising specifically. Okay.
Yeah.
And how do people reach out about that?
Yeah, they can just go on the website, bonnerhomelesstransitions.org, and fill out the application.
Okay, easy peasy.
And I'll be calling you immediately.
Yep, sounds about right. Can you talk about, and you've mentioned the other organizations that you work with,
Yeah.
aside from the EnVision Center, because we can talk about that.
Yeah.
But it might seem obvious, like how it all intertwines, but can you talk about the partnerships you have with other nonprofits and why that's really important? Because we know we're very saturated in this county with tons and tons of nonprofits, but we love to hear about when they're working together and accomplishing goals together.
So I'll start with Priest River Ministries. I feel like they are a really great stepping stone for our organization. We work close together. They provide emergency shelter for domestic violence victims. And so if we get a call from someone that needs immediate shelter, we're not able to provide immediate shelter until we get their drug test back.
Okay.
So Priest River Ministries will meet me, or we'll connect that way. They'll house them or shelter them until they can move in with us. And then Idaho has been amazing. I tell Christine that we're like the same organization with two different names, but because we just provide the wraparound support. I mean, even though we have case managers, they have mentors that really walk alongside our clients and provide that day-to-day as well. They have classes that our clients can take, whether it's parenting, budgeting. They are a religious-based organization, so we can't require anyone to participate in their program. But so far, everyone has been, they want the help.
And the people outside of those that are maybe victims of domestic violence, people who, for whatever reason, just end up homeless, is it usually because they like lose a job, or that the prices, like you talked about, inflation, things are just, and before they know it, they can't pay their rent or whatever? What's normally kind of the red flags or warning signs that they're on the path to needing your help?
Substance abuse.
Yeah. Because then that leads to losing a job or spending the money inappropriately or whatever the case may be.
Substance abuse and domestic violence are the two component. I mean, I would say that that's the main reason that people come to us.
So then is it tricky then if there's substance abuse, but they have to be clean while they're on while they're receiving your resources?
Yeah.
Do they have time to sort of get clean, or like what does that look like?
No, because the majority of our housing in the program is communal. Everyone has to be clean when they move in. But until they're clean, we provide them the support that they need. And a lot of it is knowing that they will have a place, that they do have, wraparound support.
Okay. What happens if, and again, this, I don't know how this would intertwine with maybe other organizations, but when there are like children that need the help, but their parents aren't clean, right, to get them into the communal housing, do the kids just get taken away in all of those cases, or like, I don't know what level of substance abuse has to I mean, it seems like a tricky kind of very nuanced thing.
Yeah, and that's not really a question that I can answer because unfortunately they have to be clean to be in our program.
Yeah.
And they're pretty smart. They know if they're not going to pass, and then they just kind of go on to the next.
Okay. Okay. What's been the most surprising part of this job to you? Because you did have some experience in it. You've got your happy success stories, which you knew you were going to have those once you started this work. But what's been something, and it can be another success story or just something that's really kind of like tickled you about this job that you didn't expect going into it?
Really seeing someone come in and seeing the finish line. Even though we're up to a 24-month program, that doesn't mean that it takes everyone 24 months to become self-sufficient. So seeing someone come in, when they come to us, they're at their lowest low, right?
Yeah.
So then seeing them come out on the other side that's what keeps us going.
Yeah.
Because not every story is a success story.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to ask what percentage of the people or families need the full 24 months? And then what happens when they hit 24 months and it's still, they're not on their feet?
So far, everyone is ready for self-sufficiency. It's just finding them a house or a place. So, and we say 24 months, but as long as they're actively working on the applications, we're not kicking them out.
Yeah. And are you working with any groups locally to sort of try to increase the amount of low-income housing in the area? Or I know there's different whispers of efforts going on to try to fix that problem because, like we said, it's very expensive to live here, and it's getting to the point where if you're lower income, you can't even live in Sandpoint. You have to be driving in from a half hour out of town or whatever. So are you involved in any of that, or is you kind of like, that's outside of our purview? We work with what we got.
We work with what we got. I mean, we're kind of in the loop with certain other organizations that are working on stuff. My focus right now is more on trying to find host homes or housing for teens that we can't house because they have to be 18 to be in the program. Idaho, again, Christine and I we're working together on this project trying to find answers. They have host homes, but they only have so many, right? And teenagers, people don't welcome them with open arms at all times, right? Yeah. So working with the Teen Center, just trying to provide all the resources that we can to support those kiddos that need it. I don't know what it is about Sandpoint people just up and leaving their kids.
Yeah, that's kind of surprising. Yeah.
So that's one project that we're working on as a community.
Yeah, that's great. What would be the biggest way that our community would feel it if your organization just stopped to exist?
It would be a huge devastation because there's nothing else like us, right? You have your clean and sober homes. There's one for men and there's one for women, but they don't accept children. Yeah. There's the Gospel Mission for men. I think they have 7 beds. But other than that, there's nothing else like us here in the community. So all of our people would be out, in their cars or on the streets.
And it would just continue the cycle, like you said, and it would just exponentially grow. But there's a lot of competition, like we talk about all the time at the EnVision Center, about we have so many nonprofits, and you're the only nonprofit doing what you do, but there's others that are kind of similar, and others, that are doing emergency housing or housing for men or whatever the case may be. And then there's all the nonprofits that aren't dealing directly with the homeless, but are doing other great things, whether with human needs or otherwise. What's kind of your pitch to people when you need support that I know you have a lot of choices, but consider supporting us with your time or your resources, your finances?
Just explaining the need. I mean, I don't know about you. I can't imagine ever being homeless. I can't imagine going down the road of substance abuse or being in a domestic violence situation. So just putting yourself in those shoes, seeing what you can do to help support to get them out of that situation.
Yeah. Yeah, all great stuff. I feel like we've covered a lot of the bases here. Actually, I have a question that I like to ask folks that are working in areas where you have success stories, talked about what keeps you going, the people that get to the finish line, but you also, the nature of your work, you see dark stuff too. You see sad stuff, you see stuff that breaks your heart all the time. What keeps you going through that? Like, how do you maintain your mental health and sanity when you're dealing with sometimes the underbelly of society and stuff that other people maybe even don't even want to acknowledge because it's too uncomfortable to deal with?
Yeah, the success stories definitely, my family, their support, but also just every time someone walks into my office or there's a phone call, and it's not just me, it's the staff. I mean, we are extremely blessed with the staff we have. We're very small, but we work very well together. And just knowing that as a team, every day we come in and we try and help the next person that walks through the door.
Yeah. And how big is your staff?
So there's 5 of us, 3 are full-time.
Okay. That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's great. And what are their roles and how do they support you?
So we have It's myself and then 2 program managers.
Okay.
One at the north location and south. We don't have anyone out at the Trestle Creek location. We either go out there or the clients come in to see us weekly. And then at our north location, we have a resident advisor that actually lives on site and just provides extra support to our clients in the evening.
Okay.
And then we have our maintenance guy, and he works 2 days a week.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, is there anything I forgot to ask, stuff you wanted to make sure people know, any important tidbits that we need to make sure get in this episode?
I think that's good.
We covered a lot. It was great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for what you're doing. I mean, it's such an important organization, and unfortunately, I keep being told by everybody who works in this area that it's a growing need, and we really need people like you and Bonner Homeless Transitions helping these folks and making sure that we break these cycles and get people out of these bad situations. So thank you.
Yes. No, thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. For more information, you can go to crecidaho.com. Please like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you again soon.